Welcome back to the Fertility Confidence Podcast. We are going to help you make the decision on when to move to IVF. This was a question that I got in one of our AMA boxes on Instagram, and I thought this is more than just like a one or two tile Instagram story conversation, because this is a really big decision that has multiple moving pieces. And I think one of the downsides of our traditional medical model is there isn't aid with helping you make the decision or teaching you how do we make this decision. It just is, here is what you're going to do, right? It's just this platter of, this is your option, this is your main course, there's no other options, take it or leave it. And I don't think that's how we should or need to be approaching such a big decision, and a big decision on multiple fronts. This is also a very common conversation we have with our clients inside Fertility Confidence Method. So I wanted to have it here with you today, our amazing podcast listeners. And before we get into how to make the decision on when to move to IVF, a big thank you to our amazing podcast sponsor, Cozy Earth. We have some really cool data and studies on sleep and how sleep impacts male and female factor fertility. In fact, we do have some podcast episodes already recorded you can go back and listen to on sleep and fertility. And a recent study that actually came out and came across my desk just last month showed a significant association between poor sleep and poor IVF outcomes. So yes, we definitely need more data. Yes, it's hard to study sleep in a vacuum, but we're definitely seeing that very intriguing correlation. And prioritizing your sleep is a treatment tool when it comes to optimizing your fertility. And Cozy Earth agrees with prioritizing sleep and prioritizing you, which personally I can get behind. So Cozy Earth has the softest, coolest, most luxurious sheets you will ever own. They are definitely the softest, coolest, most luxurious sheets I have ever owned. And after a few weeks with ours, I'm shocked with how cool they stay, because you think that that's just not possible, but apparently it is. And that they're actually getting softer every time I wash them. Sleep better with Cozy Earth and try them risk-free for 40% off with the code FCM. Make sure to fill out their post-purchase survey. Let them know that you are a Fertility Confidence Podcast listener, and let me know over on Instagram in my DMs if you try them out for yourself, because we are loving our Cozy Earth sheets over here. So thank you for that amazing opportunity to get some luxurious sheets, Cozy Earth. Thank you for that discount code. We really appreciate it as podcast listeners over here. So let's talk about how to make the decision to move to IVF. There's a few things that I think really come into play here. And I want to start this conversation actually with a little disclaimer that I acknowledge the price point of IVF does keep this from being an accessible option to everybody. And so I don't want you to listen to this episode and go, oh yeah, that's cool and all, but I'd love to do it and I can't afford it. I acknowledge so deeply that this is a factor on the table when it comes to making this decision. That price is a barrier to care. And it's part of why I do what I do, is trying to give couples a more accessible option for support. Obviously, I'm not doing IVF with couples, but if I can help couples get pregnant without needing those drastic, more financially challenging options, that is an amazing opportunity that I have. And my hope is that in the soon to be coming years, FCM will have a scholarship program built out to help couples in this position. This is part of my reason for profit, is I want to be able to offer some scholarships for IVF to couples that aren't going to be able to afford that. And so I wanted to acknowledge that off the hop, because I don't want to sit in this chair and say to everybody, like, this is just a simple decision, because it's not. And there's a lot of factors beyond the potential financial barrier. There's also religious reasons why IVF might not be a decision that you are making, and that's okay too. So I just wanted to preface this conversation, because I probably won't circle back to that piece, that it's not as simple. The whole conversation that I have kind of played out in my head is that it's not a simple decision, but if you aren't in the arena to make that decision, know that this is why we do Fertility Confidence Method, why we have all of our other mini courses, why we have Conception, so that there is more options for accessible care to you if you need it. Okay, so what really comes down to making this decision? This is the one area that I will bring the topic of, and I hate to say it, because we don't actually really talk about, you'll notice now that we're talking about this, that it's not really something I bring up, but this unfortunately is the one area that we need to talk about age, right? We need to finally have the conversation about age and your fertility. And if you follow me on Instagram, you'll know that this is something I don't subscribe to hugely, but age is a factor. We cannot ignore it completely. We know that your fertility declines with age. The rate at which that decline happens is variable. This is why the foundational health pieces are so important, because if we are taking care of ourselves sooner rather than later, ideally, in a foundational way to optimize your fertility, you have the power to potentially slow that decline. And this goes for both men and women. Yes, men are always making sperm, but also, yes, age matters for sperm. The quality of that sperm declines with age, and the DNA fragmentation increases with age. So we're having that same conversation for men as women, even though I feel like the age fear is a lot stronger in women, right? So we need to take that idea of age into play when we're talking, where do we go? Is it time for IVF? And we also need to take the topic of your personal timeline into play. And your personal timeline is going to be variable to you. Your timeline, my timeline, Sandra's timeline, Tina's timeline, Kristen's timeline, they're all probably different, right? You all wanted to be pregnant yesterday, ideally, but we also now need to look ahead. And so we need to take these two things into account. I also want to acknowledge that you making this decision does not mean you also need to exhaust all of your other options beforehand. Maybe it just feels right for you to go down this road, to jump into IVF. Maybe you're like, you know what? I'm sick of freaking waiting. They're telling me this is my my highest statistical chance. Let's just do that. You don't need to wait a specific amount of time. You don't need to do 10 IUIs before you get there. You don't need to do anything that you don't want to do. I think that is the biggest piece here. So if it just feels right for you, that's okay. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to have a laundry list of reasons why you're making this decision. You can quite simply just say, I'm going to do it that way. And there's no shame in that, no judgment. And if there are people shaming and judging you in your world and in your space, they are not friends that you need to keep in your circle. Okay. So I think this conversation is a funny one because, it comes from a question of like, how do I make that decision that it's time to explore that option? And then my brain also wanted to be like, you know what? You don't need a reason, right? Like I'm going to give you some questions to ask yourself. That's what we're going to talk about is here's some questions I ask my clients when I'm helping them make this decision. And I need you to ask yourself, but also know that you don't need to have 1,000,001 reasons or 1,000,000 failures to make this decision. You can just say, I'm going to go that route. And that's okay too. So what do you want to ask yourself if we're thinking about personal timeline, we're thinking about age, and we're wondering where do I go next? Like, is this my next logical step? These are the 3 to 4 questions that I ask my clients. So the first thing we want to look at is, what have I tried up until this point? So this is for the people that aren't just saying like, I'm ready, let's do this, right? If you are of the mind of like, that is my last, like, I'm not there yet maybe, but maybe I am, I'm not sure. That's sort of like up here, it's top shelf in terms of things that I've tried, and I'd like to climb the ladder. I don't want to just jump there. That's when we want to circle back to say, what have I tried up until this point? Analyze what labs you have had done, what you maybe haven't had done yet. Have you looked at out of the box thinking and advanced maneuvers? This is something we talked about in last week's episode that I recommend going back and listening to. What have you tried in terms of helping to optimize your and your partner's health? Are there gaps there? You maybe feel like you've tried everything. I can almost guarantee you, and I do not use that word lightly because we don't guarantee anything over here or make any promises, but I can almost guarantee you that you probably haven't done everything up until this point. For most people, some of you listening maybe have. But when we have clients that do clarity calls and they get on the call and say, I feel like I've done everything, we still have an XYZ option of like, you know what, this is where we would like to come in and support you. This is where, just with our brief history, can see some gaps in your care. There are usually things we still need to look at and do. And this is where Fertility Confidence Method can come into play. If you're in this space of, I feel like I've tried everything and I've exhausted all the options that I am aware of, and I'm maybe not ready to go down this route until I'm confident that I have done everything, that is truly where we shine. So what have you tried up until this point? Is there more to be done to help you feel confident in making that decision? This is a piece that I really guide my clients through of, obviously, well, not obviously, some of our clients come in and work with us and they're already on the track to IVF, and that's cool. We're meeting you where you're at. And some of our clients come to work with us and they're of the mind of, I'm open to that, but I'm not there yet. And our goal is to get them pregnant, right? That's my goal with every single one of our clients, is to get them pregnant. Our side goal, our like goal B, if you must, is, okay, and if that's not happening, I want them to feel confident and informed in making any of their treatment decisions that come along the path when we're working together. So yeah, obviously I want to get you pregnant. I want to get you pregnant as quick as possible. And I'm going to do that by finding the root cause and putting you on a plan that is backed by science and clinical experience for your own body's unique fertility identifiers. But also, I'm going to help you make decisions along the way in a confident and informed way. Because that's a big piece that I feel is missing in medicine, is it's just, here's your option. It's not, here are the options, and this is how we make a clinical decision. So what have you tried up until this point? Let's look at that. Let's analyze the crap out of it. And then let's see if there's any other wiggle room there that we have. Maybe there is. And maybe you are of the mind that you want to explore that before jumping into IVF. Or, like I already said, maybe you're of the mind that you're like, you know what? I'm just ready. And that's okay. The other question you ultimately want to ask yourself, and this is where age comes into the conversation actually, is how many kids do you ultimately want to try to have? Like if you were to sit and think, what is my dream scenario? I know in the infertility space, a lot of us start giving up on that dream scenario. You get to the point, it's a protective mechanism, right? It's a defense protective mechanism. You've wrapped your body in that proverbial bubble wrap where you're going, I'll just be happy with one. At this point, I'll just be happy with one, right? But secretly you want 3. I'm sure a lot of you can resonate with that. I know you've said that in your brain. How many kids you ultimately want to try to have? That is what needs to also factor in. This is our timeline conversation. So let's say, for example, you are 36. So you're over 35. They're going to call you geriatric. I think it's rude, but whatever. You're 36. You ideally want 3 kids. You also are kind of like, do I want to do IVF? Do I not? I'm not sure. My role, like I said, is to get you pregnant. It's also to help you make informed and confident decisions. So for my clients in that over 35 age bracket who have already been trying, especially for over a year, we're going to have a really frank conversation around the idea of making embryos. Because ultimately, I think I said 36. If you're 36, let's say you get pregnant when you're 36, then it's 2 years before you want to ultimately get pregnant again, because you're going to go through your pregnancy and then a year postpartum. So let's say 1.5 years, because you're like, I'm old, I have to get going, right? And I've had clients try to move quicker than that. So it does happen. But now you're almost 38, right? You're 37, you're almost 38. Now at that point, it's going to be a little bit harder. Maybe, not necessarily, but maybe. Let's say you get pregnant again. Awesome, right? Now we're 40 and you really want that third, right? That's where we have to think about these things. If you are over the age of 35 and you want more than one baby, we do want to have a conversation around future pacing. Maybe we can get you pregnant without IVF now. Awesome. But would it be better for you to make some embryos now so that you have a better opportunity at 39, 40, 41, 42? That's a personal decision. Not everyone is going to feel great about making embryos, and that's okay too, right? No shame, no judgment. We're all going to make the right decision for us. But we do have to sit down and be really radically honest with ourselves about our age and timeline and desired number of children, and let that help you decide how quickly you want to jump into IVF. And gosh, you guys, IVF, it's not a guarantee, right? It's not a guarantee. So I'm not saying like, oh, if you want 3 kids, just do IVF and you'll be fine. That's not how this works. And it does not mean you still don't have to do all the work before either to make this a possibility for you. But it might have the capacity to give you options later. So what have I tried up till this point? How many kids do I ultimately want to have? We want to look at your age, your timeline, your desired family size. And that is just a practical way to look at this decision. That is the just very practical aspect of what you're ultimately deciding. But the last question you want to ask yourself is, what do I want to do? What do I want? IVF is a very scary word for a lot of women. I think that the openness of IVF, egg freezing, surrogacy that is happening in social media and mainstream medicine has definitely helped it not feel so taboo, but it is still a tough and scary decision. And like I said at the top, you don't need a laundry list of reasons why you're going that route. And if you're feeling nervous and worried and scared or uncertain, then there's likely still some answers that you're searching for. And that's okay too, right? We can search for that. I think the other really challenging aspect that comes into making this decision is 2 partners not being on the same page, right? One partner saying, let's just do this, I'm ready. And the other saying, pump the brakes. And I've seen this with both dynamics. I've seen it where the woman is very much ready to jump into IVF and the male partner is like, absolutely no. And I've seen it reversed. I've seen the women being like, I'm not ready for that. And the men being like, let's just do this. I've had same sex female couples who are doing IUI with sperm donor, and one of them being like, let's just do IVF, and the other one's like, no, I'm not. Right? Like, it comes in all facets. It's a tough decision. And so if you guys aren't on the same page about that, then that is also an area that you really need to spend some time having open and honest communication about. I think it's a decision that perhaps needs to be explored in couples counseling. And that's not because I think you guys have relationship problems because you can't come to the same decision, but because having a third party there to help guide you through this challenging piece and maybe unpack some layers of your relationship amongst making this decision will help make you stronger and help you come to a healthy decision for both of you. I don't think that's a bad idea, right? And if you've never done couples counseling before, honest to goodness, the fertility journey is probably the time we all need to do it, seriously. And a lot of clinics here in Ontario, they do still require you to do one, so not uber helpful, but like one counseling session prior to IVF. I honestly haven't heard too much about that recently. I don't know if that's still a thing, but they used to. And I think that fertility clinics should all have therapists on staff that their clients have access to, because this journey, man, she's not easy. And the hard part too is that it's not just one of you going through it, it's both of you. You're going through it together as a couple, and you're going through it as individuals. And you might both experience this journey in a very different way, which then makes making these decisions slightly challenging sometimes if you have different beliefs. And you can be married or together or what have you and have different beliefs. That's okay. So exploring that together with a third party can sometimes make it just a little bit easier. So what have I tried? What is my timeline? What do I actually want to do? And I would argue that maybe the fourth sort of question here is, do I have enough information to make this decision? And this is a flaw I see in the medical community, to be perfectly honest, is a lot of couples don't feel like they have all of the information. So what else do we need? What do you need to feel comfortable and confident to make this decision? And I would spend some time kind of like journaling that out and then seeing what comes out of your brain and thinking, okay, where do I get these answers? What do I need to do to feel comfortable and confident? What does that look like? Some reasons that I find couples are being recommended IVF where I kind of scratch my head a little bit. One of them is recurrent miscarriage. I see this with clients all the time where they are experiencing recurrent loss and their clinic, does a very surface level look and then goes, let's just do IVF. And I will agree that yes, if a genetic component is at play with your losses, doing PGTA or more extensive genetic testing with your embryos can definitely offer helpful insight. But there's still a lot of underlying miscarriage risk factors that IVF does not overcome. So it breaks my heart when I have a recurrent loss client that's being told to do IVF, but no one's actually looking at their microbiome, their immune system, their thyroid, their insulin, their vitamin D and other nutrient levels, the DNA fragmentation. Like, no one's actually digging into the root cause of why the losses are happening. They're just suggesting IVF. And to ask a couple to spend $25,000 to $40,000 to do IVF, but not have any idea why they're having losses is truly malpractice, in my opinion. I had a client very early on in my career. She was having, she had a miscarriage every single time she got pregnant. I think she'd had 2 before we started working together. She had another 2 or 3 while we were working together. We had tried all the things. And I'm talking like this was 7 years ago. So it was a long time ago. I could go back and look at her case and see how differently I would approach it today. But she was one of my first clients that I really pushed the immune piece with. And I was like, I'm really confident this is the problem. And it's still to this day, we don't have a lot of information. We don't do a lot of testing. So 7 years ago, it was the wild, wild west when we talked about the immune system. But I was really fortunate to have a relationship with an RE in the town that I worked in who also believed that the immune system was a big piece. And so originally she was working with someone else and they were recommending IVF, and she felt very uncertain about that. She's like, it's a lot of money and like we still don't know why I'm having these miscarriages. I don't understand how I have no problem getting pregnant. So what is IVF actually going to offer me? And I was like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong to have more questions. So I had her get referred over to a new RE for a second opinion. I wrote him a letter. I said, I've been working with this couple for almost 2 years. This is their situation. They've been told IVF. She's skeptical. I feel strongly like she needs immune support, and that her body's able to get pregnant. It's the staying pregnant that's the problem. And so he was willing to try an immune protocol with her. They ended up doing prednisone and intralipid therapy on her next positive pregnancy test. And that was the first pregnancy she carried to term. When she wanted to have a second baby, she went back to the clinic. She said, I want to do the exact same thing. Did not experience a single loss, got pregnant the second month they were trying, did the immune protocol. They have a beautiful little girl. Is that the case for everybody? No, right? It's not. This is just one story, but it was a really impactful turning point for me from a practice standpoint, where I was like, okay, this immune system stuff, this is not nothing. And she was not the first nor the last client with recurrent loss that was told IVF was their only option, that didn't need IVF. They simply just needed some immune support to make this work for them. So that, if that is you, if that's part of your story, then IVF, if you want to go forward with it, I'm very supportive of that, because like I said, this is not a decision that you need to have a laundry list of reasons for, but you also still need to uncover the root cause piece of the loss and treat accordingly. You might still need to do immune support with IVF. You might still need to improve nutrient levels with IVF, right? It doesn't need to be one or the other. It's about gold standard of care. The other really common factor that drives IVF decision is AMH. So a lot of times I'll have clients who've been told, well, your AMH is really low and you're 33, so you're not getting any younger, so you better just do IVF. And we cannot make an informed clinical decision based on one lab factor in and of itself. And AMH is not something we should be making impactful clinical decisions based on. So if you do have low AMH and you've been told that this is your only option, I really do encourage you to seek out a second opinion and to dig deeper. One of the things you absolutely have to do if you've been told your AMH is low is advocate for a antral follicle count ultrasound. AFC is a significantly better marker of ovarian reserve. What follicles are actually there, right? And I've had clients with low AMH and perfectly beautiful AFCs. AMH can potentially be a marker to show us how your body will respond to IVF medication. So I'm not saying it's not nothing, but it can't be a big clinical driving factor, especially if you've had a very basic, very surface level look at your fertility up until this point. So just some food for thought if you are in this decision-making process as well, and you're like, okay, you know what? This is what's happening, and this is why they're telling me I should do this. If that feels right for you, awesome. And if it doesn't, ask yourself the questions, make the list, figure out where to go from here. And we're here for you if you're unsure of what that looks like. Okay. Hopefully this was helpful for you guys in terms of making the decision. I think you can roll through these questions if you're trying to make an IUI decision as well. And any really decision when it comes to your fertility, it really does come down to these things. What have I tried so far? What's my timeline look like? And what do I actually want to do? You ultimately are the one that gets to decide, not your doctor. But it's our role as your practitioners in your care team to give you all of the facts to make an informed clinical decision. And if you don't have all the facts to be able to do that, something is missing. Ask the questions and get the support. And I'll see you guys in the next episode.